I think a lot of ministry, if you're just starting out, a lot of training has to involve unlearning some of the bad habits that we've got, and the dependency on buildings and programs and musical instruments. And, you know, I see people starting churches and they're like, yeah, we're just going to start from the very beginning, and we're going to have a service and we're going to have this and that. They've already picked out the sound system, and they've really made so many decisions without the people. Mm-hmm. And you really have to start with the people. It's like Luke 10. You don't know what's going to happen, but it's like a box of chocolates, you know. You just don't know what you're going to get, but God knows, and you need to kind of progress that way. So there's a passage in the scriptures that I was given by a mentor of mine, Tom Wolfe from California, and it's when Paul talks to Timothy, he explains what he's done, and he gives a kind of pattern for apostolic ministry or for starting ministries. He gives it to him in 1st and 2nd Timothy, and he says he says in talking about prayer, he says, of this gospel I was appointed a herald and an apostle and a teacher. So if you look at it, there's this teaching on prayer, that we should pray for those in authority, etc., and which really is how ministry starts. It starts with prayer, with dependence on God, asking God to do something, to send laborers into his harvest, and to prepare the ground for ministry to happen. And once we've begun the prayer process, then the next phase is we become storytellers, we become heralds. Because as God begins to do things in people's lives, begins to answer their prayers and begins to open their eyes towards him, then we get to explain that this is Jesus, you know, speaking to them, wanting a relationship with them, wanting to bring people into his kingdom. And so as people begin to respond and give their lives to Jesus, then we become apostles. We begin to throw parties and create structures and form communities out of that. And then the last phase is the teaching phase, where we begin to explain what we've done so that they can go and do something similar, that they can entrust these things to faithful people. And the process continues, and it just replicates, and it goes viral, and then it takes over the whole city. So, there's a pattern that I've seen in the life of Paul and also in our own ministry that follows those things. But another piece of advice I would have is, if you're starting a brand new church, keep Christians away from it. Because, there are some Christians that just go from church to church. You know, you start up something and they'll turn up and they'll be there for 6 months and they'll be disgruntled about their last church. But when they leave you, and they will, they'll also be disgruntled about your church. And it's best not to have them in the first place. It's good to have them if you want to build up numbers and write really good reports. But long term, just start with the people that God's bringing you to, that God's put on your heart. Start with them. And then as their family and their friends and their networks begin to come in, it just grows slowly and organically, and it's not very impressive, but it just gets bigger and bigger, and that's the way it needs to go. So, yeah, Christians, keep them away, really. They're a problem. Tell them to go back to their own church.